Hello there, welcome to the fifth lecture on Seminar in Epidemiology with Dr. Daniel Gan. Today we'll be talking about health determinants cumulate across the life course. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to explain prenatal and early life influences on health, give examples of intergenerational transmission of unequal health outcomes, and describe the influences of socioeconomic status on cognition over the life course. There are three theories on how early life influences health outcomes. These theories are not mutually exclusive. The first of this is biological programming. Biological programming states that early life exposure affects health regardless of intervening exposures. For example, as a fetus, someone might have experienced alcoholic toxins, and this affects their health subsequently regardless of their subsequent consumption of alcohol as an individual. Biological programming points to the presence of sensitive period for some developmental needs. The second is dose-response relationship. This states that adverse influences accumulate over time. So somebody might have poorer health because they gradually accumulated the corrosive impact of various stresses, both chemical and social, across their life. Somebody who believes in this theory might point to the fact that neighborhood deprivation and mortality is stronger over a 20-year observation than a single-year observation. The third of this is cascade theory, and this really attempts to explain why in some cases we see health decline so drastically, so suddenly. Which of these theories do you find more convincing? Why? I invite you to pause the video now and post your answers on the discussion page. You may pause the video now. Generally, which theory we find most convincing reflect our life experiences. But these theories are all true and useful to explain different aspects of health in the life of different individuals. Here is a quote that shows these differences in life experiences. Now I invite you to pause the video again to respond to the second discussion question. How might a social epidemiologist respond appropriately to the fact that life is so unfair? What response is less appropriate? Why? Responses that are less appropriate might have failed to take into account the fact that these exposures are prenatal. They may also exacerbate inequity by interfering in reproductive rights or further harming disadvantaged groups. Childhood experiences is an important determinant of health. It is influenced by family and neighborhood socioeconomic status and income inequality. In US counties with greater income inequality, more maltreatment is reported. Its effects are various, ranging from increased risk of various chronic diseases, including depression and alcohol use. These effects are very long-term, as shown in a 32-year follow-up Finnish study. An interesting study also shows that diabetes and mortality can be traced to food insecurity 2 generations prior, when the grandparent is experiencing food insecurity pre-puberty. These are really interesting findings showing how biological and social influences intertwine. This Dutch study shows that childhood trauma is associated with poorer mental health, which is in turn associated with greater cannabis and tobacco use. Of course, it is possible to buck the trend to which one is born. Statistically speaking, this may be few, but maltreated children who succeeded tend to demonstrate greater ego control, self-esteem, self-confidence. They are also more reserved and controlled in the way they relate to others. Close reciprocal relationships with a friend helps. That said, resiliency, that is great performance despite poor or challenging background, tend to diminish with age. These make it really difficult to fault people with challenging childhood experiences. Epidemiologists would want to be careful not to unnecessarily burden this group or shift the blame of poor health to them. Here are more examples of intergenerational transmission of health capital. I'd like to draw your attention to the fourth point. In this study, pregnancy stress influenced gestational age, birth weight, and antisocial behavior in both genetically related and unrelated in vitro babies. Pregnancy stress influenced ADHD among genetically related babies only, and postnatal mental health influenced child's anxiety more than pregnancy stress. Here we see a combination of biological, social, and intergenerational transmission. Hypervigilance and the ability to develop trusting relationships are important mediators between experiences of abuse and subsequent health outcomes. Now let's apply all that we learned to socioeconomic status and cognitive abilities. Let's say we come across two children who are struggling academically. What would you say is the issue at hand? Many of us might think it is because the children are not studying or behaving well. And we would be right. The children's behaviors are important determinants of their cognitive test scores. But what if you are given the new information that one child comes from a poorer family background and another comes from a more well-to-do family? How does this information change the way you would go about addressing this? An interesting decomposition study of the socioeconomic status gap in cognitive test scores shows that much of the child's cognitive ability at age 10 is influenced by parental cognitive ability, family background, and also the social skills of the parent. If we were to exclude parental cognitive ability, attitudes, and social skills, which is the ongoing interaction between the parent and the child, there would still be substantial influence of parental education and family background. This means that different groups may require different interventions. The ability to tease out this evidence and to find the factors that accurately addresses these differences in cognitive test scores across socioeconomic status groups is the superpower of the epidemiologist. Now, what about cognitive abilities in late life? Cognitive abilities in late life is influenced by early life education, social support, positive emotions, and new learning activities and training. Of course, health factors such as diet and exercise also contribute to better cognitive abilities in late life. All this add up to cognitive reserve, which is the ability to maintain one's cognitive abilities amid declining neurobiology. The presence of early life education as a determinant of cognitive reserve has important equity implications. This framework gives a comprehensive approach to cognitive health promotion. What intervention will you do among which population? Take a look at the video link to find populations you might want to focus on. Where might you find population data for epidemiological studies to inform your intervention? One such comprehensive dataset is the Canadian Longitudinal Study on Aging. In the USA, there is the Health and Retirement Study and the National Health and Aging Trends Study. These datasets provide comprehensive measures of various variables you might need, including cognitive abilities, social determinants of health, and other factors mentioned in the cognitive reserve framework. Here's an exercise to get familiar with a dataset. If a variable of interest is not in the dataset, you would want to collect new data to conduct your study. To conclude, what is social epidemiology? We have learned that health status rises in a stepwise fashion with income, education, occupational ranks, wealth, resource access, and neighborhood quality. These systematic variations are in principle correctable. Epidemiologists guide action to improve population health. We've seen 2 lectures ago that psychosocial theories span social psychology and community structures to inform equity-oriented policies. Last lecture, we learned that biomarkers provide complex indicators of allostatic loads and health capital. And today, we see how intergenerational perspectives complement with a focus on early or late life experiences. These associations are encapsulated in theories expressed as diagrams, including more comprehensive or more focused diagrams in the previous slide, and together they explain patterns to support precise interventions. Both associations and theories are needed. Next week, we will come back in person to talk about theoretical models of health behavior. Here are some reading tips. I invite you to read critically, and here's a link that defines critical thinking. See you next week.